Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ito pong muli ang inyong lingkod, si Atty. Bueno. Ang akin pong mailbox sa ngayon ay binabaha ng napakaraming katanungan tungkol sa mga issues at mga problemang kinakaharap ni Tito Vic and Joey at sa Tape Incorporated na may kinalaman sa copyright infringement, sa trademark infringement, at recently, yung application for the issuance of the writ of preliminary injunction. So, although na-discuss ko na to sa aking previous vlog, yung preliminary injunction, kaya lamang nagkaroon ng karagdagang katanungan do sa TRO, or Temporary Restraining Order, at do sa Final and Permanent Injunction. So, ikukumpara natin ngayon at gagawin nating halimbawa ang kaso ni Tito Vic and Joey, but I would like to remind everyone that we will not be discussing here the merits of the case, but we will just focus on the legal principles and existing laws about the procedures, no, on how to obtain a preliminary injunction and a final and permanent injunction. At ano ba yung mga requirements na dapat sundin ng applicant for an injunction? Okay? So, at ang episode na to, re-remind ko din uli, ay hindi po isang legal opinion or advice to anyone, because ito po ay for educational purposes lamang, para naman madagdagan ang kaalaman ng ating mga kababayan na interesado dito sa topic ng TVJ, at talaga namang sinusundan nila lagi kung ano ang nagiging development dito sa kaso ni Tito Vic and Joey. Okay, umpisahan po natin sa Temporary Restraining Order or TRO. So ano po ba itong TRO? No? To be specific, a TRO is a written order issued, no, by the judge or by the court, no, telling someone, hoy, tumigil ka sa ginagawa mo. No? So, it is a written order issued by the court telling someone to refrain, no, from doing a particular act or acts, because the continuance of doing this particular act or acts would cause further harm or injury on the part of the applicant for injunction order or restraining order. Okay? So, ito ay ini-issue ng isang executive judge. No? Kadalasan ng mga abogado nagpa-file kagad ng TRO for their clients. Bakit? Kasi medyo mas easier to obtain this kapag kumpleto talaga yung elements and requisites mo. Sapagat it does not require, most of the time, it does not require notice and hearing. No? Bakit hindi kadalasan nagkakaroon ng notice and hearing in this case, no, regarding the application for a TRO? Sapagat emergency in character to no? There is an urgency on the part of the applicant for the restraining order na dapat ma-release to agad, because otherwise, no, the applicant will suffer grave and irreparable injury or harm. Yun ang iniiwasan dito. So the judge will immediately issue this TRO without notice and hearing doon sa kalaban. Okay? So para ma-prevent yung further harm or injury. Okay? So once issued, initially, this is valid and effective for 72 hours or 3 days. No? 3 araw lang yan. But the applicant may request for an extension of another 17 days. So, yung initial 3 days or 72 hours plus the request of 17 days, if granted, then it's going to be a total of 20 days effectivity. Okay? So, ang kaibahan ng preliminary injunction is that although parehong temporary in character to, temporary relief yan, and they also, both are classified as injunction, pareho yan. Okay? So ang kaibahan lang nila is the effectivity or the amount of time that they are effective. TRO is effective only up to a maximum of 20 days if they are issued by the regional trial court. But if the TRO is issued by the Court of Appeals, then it is valid for 60 days, but not subject to any extension. But if the TRO application is filed with the Supreme Court, it is valid until further orders by the Supreme Court. So yun yung kaibahan niya. TRO issued by the Regional Trial Court, 20 days maximum. Issued by the Court of Appeals, 60 days maximum. Issued by the Supreme Court until further orders. So yun yung stages or differences nila by the RTC, by the Court of Appeals, by the Supreme Court. So pahaba ng pahaba yung period niya. As compared with the preliminary injunction. Ang preliminary injunction ay walang specific period or amount of time kung kailan siya magiging valid. Hanggang kailan yung valid. For as long as there is the trial, the hearing of the case, at hindi pa tapos yung presentation of the evidence and the cross-examination of the witnesses in the case, so nandoon pa din yung preliminary injunction. At yan ay magpapatuloy. Temporary relief nga yan ng aplikante. So nandiyan lang yan para maiwasan yung further harm on the part of the applicant. But once the presentation of the evidence and once all the witnesses in the case had already been cross-examined, then the judge is now mandated to make a conclusion. Magde-decide yan. No? If the conclusion or the decision of the judge or the court is favorable to the applicant, then the judge, the court will confirm the previously issued preliminary injunction. So the permanent and the final injunction is the confirmation for the issuance of the writ of preliminary injunction. So, yung una, yung dalawa, temporary restraining order, TRO. Tapos, writ of preliminary injunction. Both are temporary in character. Pero pagdating sa dulo, after the end of the trial, at the end of the hearing, nag-decide si judge na the applicant is really entitled na patigilin tong defendant sa pinaggagawa niya na because the applicant will definitely suffer grave and irreparable injury. Susunod si final and permanent injunction. But balikan natin yung preliminary injunction. But when the court should issue the writ of preliminary injunction, there are certain requirements that must be complied and proven by the applicant of the preliminary injunction. Kasi yung burden of proof nasa applicant o applicante nung preliminary injunction. So the number one requirement na dapat ipakita niya sa hukuman is the fact that the applicant has an existing right and that he is entitled to this temporary relief na kung tawagin natin ay injunction. Okay, yun yung number one. Number two is that if the court will fail to issue the preliminary injunction, the applicant will suffer injustice. It would work to the applicant's injustice. Magkakaroon ng injustice on the part of the applicant. Nabubulol na ako. Okay. So number three, and this is one of the most important consideration by the court. the applicant for the preliminary injunction will suffer grave and irreparable harm or injury. So pag yan lumabas yung grave and irreparable injury, medyo lumalamang ng konti sa labanan yung aplikante. But please take note of the two adjectives in this case, do sa number 3. Grave na, irreparable pa yung injury. So what does the law mean in this grave and irreparable injury? Ang ibig sabihin lamang dito is that yung injury or harm is something that cannot be compensated. No, it cannot be compensated by any amount of money. Hindi mo masusukat yung bigat, no, at tindi ng injury or damage na that the applicant will suffer if an injunction order will not be issued by the court. Okay? So, yung tatlo na yan, napaka-importante niyan. Kapag yung tatlong requirements na yan ay lumabas doon sa investigasyon at examination ng korte, most likely, may ilalabas ang desisyon for the issuance of the writ of preliminary injunction. Okay? So, yan yung writ of preliminary injunction. So, pagkatapos niya, nung tutuloy-tuloy yan, magkakaroon ng trial, hearing for that case, then, kapag napatunayan at favorable sa aplikante, the judge will now then confirm the preliminary injunction and it will be converted now into a permanent and final injunction. Pero may nagtanong din sa akin doon sa aking mailbox, pwede bang hindi ma-issue yung injunction? Palagay mo, nagkaroon daw ng talagang injury or harm. At talagang it would work to the injustice naman daw kapag hindi na-issue yung injunction at talaga namang entitled siya sa temporary relief na injunction. Pwedeng hindi maglabas ng desisyon in favor of the applicant ang hukuman, no? At hindi siya maglalabas talaga ng injunction even if it is proven that he is entitled to the issuance of the injunction. Ano ang magiging dahilan para hindi lumabas yung injunction? Kapag napatunayan na although he is suffering from harm or injury at nagkaroon ng damages, pero kung yung injury na yan, yung harm na yan, can be compensated, then the injunction order will not be issued by the court. Kaya nga, di ba, kadalasan pag may nag-file ng application for injunction, yung dependent umu-oppose yan, pero nire-require siya ng ating hukuman, mag-post ka ng bond. Yung bond na yon ay is to answer for any damages or injury sustained or incurred by the applicant for the injunction. So, kung the injury or the harm can be compensated, hindi may issue yung injunction order. Dapat mapatunayan ng aplikante for an injunction order that the harm or injury is not inchoate. No, yan, nakalimutan ko kanina. The harm or the injury is not future. It is not an inchoate harm or injury. It is present. And the applicant is actually suffering, no, from that injury, and that the failure of the court to issue the injunction order would cause further harm and injury to the applicant. Okay? So, yan po ang aking paliwanag tungkol sa TRO, preliminary injunction, permanent, and final injunction. So, pwede nating ihalin tulad yan doon sa kaso ni TVJ or ni Tito Vic and Joey. Pero hindi po natin pinag-usapan dito yung merito ng kaso at ang ating pong dinidiscuss ay yung steps, requisites, requirements para ma-issue ang isang preliminary injunction, ang isang TRO, at ang isang permanent and final injunction. Sana po ay nadagdagan ang inyong legal na kaalaman dito sa episode na to. Hanggang sa muli po, ito po ang inyong lingkod, si Atty. Rene Bueno.